American public opinion. You heard broad appeals to national unity, calls for strong borders, a robust military. You heard warm words for the country's bedrock institutions, from the family to our democratic process. Outside the faculty lounge, most Americans like these things. They agree with them. Donald Trump remains controversial as a person, but the bulk of his positions are not controversial. Not very. Check the polling on that. And that may be the key thing to know about our current politics. It's mostly personal. If you read a Trump speech in a British accent, pretty much everybody would applaud. Not everybody, but most people. Well, maybe unfortunately for all of us, last night's State of the Union was not delivered in a British accent. Democrats did not applaud. In the modern Democratic Party, everything Donald Trump says is hate speech, even the things the left once agreed with. Yes, Trump has changed the Republican Party. A lot has been written about that. But not nearly as much as his administration has changed Democrats. If you just returned from a year abroad, prepare yourself. You will not recognize the new Democratic Party. Last night, Democratic members refused to stand or clap when Trump praised the national anthem, when he praised military veterans, when he pointed out new low black unemployment numbers. Some refused to stand for Steve Scalise, the Louisiana congressman who was nearly murdered last year by a Bernie Sanders supporter. So what is going on here? Well, obviously they're giving Trump the finger. Bad manners are now a form of resistance. But what if it's more than that? What if Democrats actually don't like those things anymore? What if praising our veterans or our flag really does enrage the modern left? Well, in a tweet during the speech, MSNBC host Joy Reid put it this way, quote, church, family, police, military, the national anthem, Trump trying to call on all the tropes of 1950s-era nationalism. The goal of this speech appears to be to force the normalization of Trump on the terms of the bygone era. Now think about that for a minute. Church, family, police, military, and love of country are now merely, quote, tropes from a bygone era? Most Americans consider those things the pillars of our civilization. And if you don't agree with that, imagine a society without those things. What would it look like? How long could it last? Would you want to live there? Joy Reid would. So would many of her co-anchors over at MSNBC and her Harvard classmates, and apparently most of the Democratic caucus on Capitol Hill. Church, family, police, military, those words disgust them. This isn't a political resistance. It's not about Donald Trump. It's nihilism, the mindless impulse to tear down what you did not build. It's rage at your father, translated into political terms, a politics that elevates all that is ugly and decadent and seeks to undermine the decent and the beautiful and all that came before. This isn't a philosophy, it's a sickness. And once you catch it, you're apt to say things like this.
He gives a speech tonight in which he makes it sound like the biggest issue in the United States, the biggest threat is MS-13, a gang nobody that doesn't watch Fox News has ever heard of.
For this president to conflate the Dreamers with gang members, he was demonizing our immigrants here, and I was offended.
So MS-13 is merely something that Fox News created to demonize immigrants? Presumably those would be the very same immigrants that gang routinely kills because they only kill immigrants. We don't want to think the left really believes any of this, but we're starting to suspect they really do. Joe Concha writes about media for The Hill, and he joins us tonight. So, Joe, over on another cable channel, one of the contributors said that she was, in effect, triggered by the word family in the speech. That was offensive. Maybe it was a dog whistle or a code word for something else. What did you... That, to me, kind of crystallized the response. What was your view of it?
The view overall was, who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe polls that were taken by people from across the country by CBS and CNN? I get their flash polls. You can only hold them in so much weight, and maybe a couple more Republicans watched last night that answered to this poll, but I don't think it skewed it that much. So you either believe them or you believe pundits that primarily do their pontificating from studios in New York and Washington and almost never venture out. And all I could think of was 2016 and the election in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, and the fact that no one got anything close to getting those states right in terms of that blue wall coming down because no one can gauge the true pulse of the country. So we see the analysis today, Tucker, and last night, and then we compare it to polls that have just astounding numbers. CNN saw its respondents say the speech was very or somewhat positive. It goes higher on CBS, it goes to 75%. But here are two key stats. 8 in 10 in the CBS poll who watched felt that the president was trying to unite the country rather than divide it. Yet all we heard from pundits was that that this was a gloomy and divisive speech. And finally, out of the CBS poll, put the partisans aside, those who identify as independents, 73% saw this speech as positive. But if you never heard about these polls and you watched the coverage today, you would think that this was one of the worst, most divisive, most darkest speeches, most darkest is a double negative, darkest speeches that we have ever seen from a president.
It's almost as if there's a disconnect between the public and the people who are supposed to be gathering its news and presenting reality to them.
Well, yes. I mean, look at Joy Reid and her saying that MS-13 is a Fox story. I think she got her F mixed up. It's an FBI story, as in they're on the FBI list. And it's not like this is just a gang that you could put together a football team with. There are 70,000 members in MS-13 in Long Island, not too far from me here in Jersey. They committed 25 murders, according to local authorities, since 2016. That's a big deal when you hear about that many murders.
But I wonder, I mean, if
gang.
you dig down a little bit, how many of those murders were people in your neighborhood or mine? Let's see, 0. How many were of fellow Salvadoran, Guatemalan, Honduran immigrants? 100% of them. So how is it anti-immigrant to oppose a gang that kills immigrants?
Well, it kind of contradicts what the president said the week before, which was he extended his DACA proposal to 1.8 million people. I mean, that is far more than the 800,000 that we have been hearing. So how can he propose something like that and be anti-immigrant at the same time? It's a walking contradiction, Tucker.
So you got to wonder, I mean, is there anyone who's at these networks who's thinking through what life after Trump might look like? I mean, if you alienate half the country or devalue your credibility with all the country, because they have, what happens when he's gone?
Oh, boy. It's going to be a complete disaster, I would say. I mean, the only reason why ratings are a little bit higher and being propelled is because of Donald Trump and obviously the vitriol towards him. And I think what's happening now, and I honestly believe this, that you have a lot of pundits, particularly Republican pundits that are anti-Trump, that are telling their audiences on those networks what they want to hear. In essence, comfort food. Because on their phones afterwards, they're checking Twitter. And if they are even remotely contradictory in terms of not being anti-Trump, and we saw this last year with Van Jones after the president's address to the joint session of Congress. He had praised the president, said he looked presidential, and he got bullied and destroyed on social media to the point where he had to go back on the air and say, wait a minute, let me clarify what I really said. So I think now at this point you have anchors and pundits that are very, very afraid that their audiences will turn on them unless they say exactly what they want to hear. And it's Trump derangement syndrome as well, which, you know, obviously if you suffer for that for more than 4 hours, go to a safe space immediately.
Yeah, it's an airless room, and Twitter makes it worse. Joe, thank you for that.
Good to see you.
I see you. In the wake of the president's address, members of the press and the Democratic Party outdid one another in an effort to be as panicked, as terrified as possible. How, they wondered, could the president speak for an hour about America and never mention the far-off nation of Russia?
This is a president who's under criminal investigation right now for obstruction of justice with regard to the Russia investigation.
There is a missing major figure in this hall tonight that we ought not to forget about, and that is the special prosecutor of the United States, who is at this hour probably meeting with his team, deciding where they go tomorrow.
He sort of hovers over the chamber, doesn't he?
And that is an extraordinarily important part of what's going on in Washington, D.C.
When Putin is not met by power, it is almost like he is giving an invitation to continue his assaults. That's tantamount to a malfeasance.
President Trump is completely silent about Russia's ongoing assault on our democracy and his administration's outrageous refusal to impose sanctions. What's that about? What is that about? What do the Russians have on him politically, personally, financially?
Noted foreign policy experts Nancy Pelosi and Cory Booker, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Illinois Congressman Luis Gutierrez went even farther. He became the most hysterical, heavy breathing now. He said the president's speech, this is what he said, quote, whoever translated it for him from Russian did a good job. Mark Green is a Democrat. He's a creator of Shadowing Trump on Twitter. He's published 23 books on public affairs. Been around. Mark, you have been around long enough to remember when the McCarthy era was kind of a central lesson for American liberals, when hysteria overtakes a political system and people start accusing one another of things without any proof at all, and people are drummed out of the public sphere because of it. And at the time, people said things exactly like Congressman Gutierrez said. Oh, translated from the original Russian. Does it strike you that your side is doing that exact thing right now?
Not at all. Let's stick to the facts. I do think Trump's State of the Union was passable. If you have amnesia over 18 months in the past, where he, of course, mocked and insulted Meryl Streep, Mexicans, Muslims.
Wait.
He
mocked Meryl Streep. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know. I kind of supported him until I found out he mocked Meryl Streep.
5 minutes to play to your audience.
No, I'm done. Meryl Streep. That's
you had 5 minutes. Maybe you give me 1 minute. All fact checkers, led by the Washington Post, have documented over 2,000 misleading or false statements. You know, did Barack Obama illegally wiretap Donald Trump? Of course not. Should he have said of a talk show host he had a bad face job? No, listen.
Oh, get going, it's your show now. But can I ask you a real question?
One more sentence. His intelligence agencies have said that Russia hacked our election. So he is silent on Putin,
they haven't explained what that
and
meant.
He plays up MS-13. So if Democrats are upset, you say they're hysterical. His tweets and his public comments are so hysterical.
Got it.
World popular opinion has gone from 60% favorable for America to 20%. Tucker, they're laughing
the Belgians
at
don't
you.
like this. Okay. Can I ask you a couple quick questions, though?
Please.
Look, I get Democrats don't like Trump. They hate his tweets. I kind of hate his tweets, too, so I get that part.
And his false statements.
Oh, all right. Okay, fine. And he attacked Meryl Streep. Wow, that's too much. But why would they sit and refuse to clap when he said nice words about the national anthem and our military veterans? What message does that send?
Well, you and I know that Democrats and Republicans have a bipartisan affection for the military. And for you to pretend Democrats are anti-military is
pretending anything.
ridiculous.
I'm asking you a question. What's the answer?
You know what's going on with the flag.
No, how about let's start with the veterans. What's going on there? Are you triggered by veterans?
You have the salute. The flag is not about veterans.
Well, I'm asking you about veterans. He was complimenting veterans. They sat there.
No.
Why?
You have the right to salute the flag. You know that Donald Trump has gone after black athletes like Colin Kaepernick who want to protest police misconduct.
Trust me, I know everything's racist.
He did that. He is so anti-minority, which is why he gets 5% of the black vote.
And he's mean to Meryl Streep. I agree. No, it's a bridge too far. Can I ask you a question, though? Why, when he says complimentary thing? No, I'm going to let you answer. Please answer the question I asked, which is when they sit there and hear him compliment our military veterans and refuse to applaud. I know they don't like him, that's fine, but why not applaud the veterans?
Of course Democrats are for veterans, but
why not applaud them? Why is that hard? I don't understand.
You're talking about the audience response. I thought this was about Trump's State of the Union, right?
When Steve Scalise gets a standing ovation, why not just join it? He's a member of Congress who was shot by a Bernie supporter. He's still alive. That's good. Why not support that? I don't understand. I'd hate to think Democrats are becoming extreme and deranged and out of touch with popular opinion, but that's the conclusion I'm reaching because I watched last night.
Joe, who talked about polls, you just said out of touch with popular opinion. I
Why
believe
can't you
that
applaud for Steve Scalise? Why is that hard?
You're talking about Steve
just answer my
Scalise.
question.
Allow me to finish a sentence after the comma. You want to talk about polls because he is an incessant liar, and because he is insulting Dreamers as if they are all MS-13.
Oh, did he say that last night? I thought he was offering amnesty to 2 million of them.
For $30 billion wall that Mexico didn't pay for. Come on, Tucker, let's hear the full thing.
Mark, you used to be such a reasonable guy. I look at the landscape and I think Trump says some unreasonable things, but then the left doubles down and becomes so much more unreasonable than Trump that you're going to get him reelected by your inability to follow a linear thought without yelling about Trump and Meryl Streep.
You acknowledge in a clause, he says some unreasonable things.
Yeah, he does.
But the black Democrats didn't applaud because he took false credit for black unemployment. Look, let's talk numbers. Joe talked numbers about who watched the State of the Union. Allow me to finish.
Why wouldn't they applaud for Steve Scalise? Why don't you answer that and we can move on?
Numbers are, by 2-1, the public doesn't trust him. Now, your audience does, and you do, but the world is laughing, and the polls
trust any
internationally
politician.
and in America
I'm interested in their ideas, and I support the ones that I think are right, and I oppose the ones I don't, with him or with any other politician.
The issue isn't Meryl Streep. The issue is a president who demeans minorities, opponents.
Really quick, let me just ask you one simple question. It's a factual question. If the president offered, as he did last night, amnesty to and the final number will be over 2 million people here illegally, a bigger offer than Obama ever gave, then Why? How is he against them?
I know the
He's
answer.
offering them citizenship.
I know the
What's
answer.
the answer? What's
I
the
know
answer?
the answer.
What's the answer?
All of us would agree to it in a bill just about dreamers. But what Trump is saying is, I'll do it if you give me $30 billion for a wall that's not necessary. Why is he linking the dreamers to something else? It's Republican
Why is he linking
ransom.
people who snuck in the country to attempts to keep other people from sneaking in the country? I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you tomorrow on that, Mark.
Tucker, $10.
Are you insane?
Did they sneak into the country or were they babies? Tucker?
Well, their parents snuck into the country and they're getting amnesty too.
Or were they babies? Stop misleading your audience.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Well,
Mark, thanks for joining us, and good luck. Good luck, Mark. Top Silicon Valley company Airbnb tried to win over customers by touting its own virtue in contrast to the president, who was repulsive. Is that working? We'll talk to one of the company's executives who joins us next. Well, the tech company Airbnb, which is run by very rich people who are definitely your moral betters, used the State of the Union address as an opportunity to denounce the Trump administration and its immigration policy. The company debuted a new ad just before the speech that ridicules the president's recent comments about poor and dangerous countries. Here's part of it. We'll see you in Port-au-Prince. A short time ago, we spoke to Airbnb's head of policy, who was also former aide to President Bill Clinton, Chris Lehane. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So, obviously very familiar with your work for many years in the political sphere. Now you're working for a big commercial company. And I'm a little confused by the message of the ad. The message appears to be the president is immoral, but we're virtuous. Therefore, spend money with us. Is that the message?
Well, I don't think Tucker, that any of the words you just used appear anywhere in the ad. In fact,
no, they don't.
If you actually look at if you look at the trajectory of things, we actually ran our first ad along these lines on Fox last year during the Super Bowl.
We appreciate that.
We ran an ad. Yeah, I'm sure you do, and I'm sure the company did. But the ad was really focused on the same subject matter that this ad is focused on, which is this concept of we accept. Right? We're a people-to-people based platform. We have over 250 million users. They're global, 191 countries. And we do believe our mission is to allow anyone to belong anywhere. And so last year on the Super Bowl, we ran an ad about we accept, which really embraced the idea of inclusion and diversity. It was in response to the travel ban that took place. And really, over the course of the year, we have continued to step out on issues that really do implicate and are inconsistent with our core mission of allowing anyone to belong anywhere. So this ad that we ran,
that's not your core mission. Your core mission is to make money.
It shines sunshine
Are you in church
on
now?
some beautiful places, and it extols the virtues of some wonderful people.
Because you're virtuous and you're not in this to get rich. I doubt you take a salary from Airbnb. Just the moral satisfaction of being on the right side of the history is.
Let me ask you, Tucker.
That's hilarious. That's your core mission.
How much do our hosts, Tucker, make on each transaction that takes place on the platform?
I'm not attacking your. Look, but just to be clear, I'm not attacking Airbnb.
But you are attacking.
I'm not. I'm attacking your mischaracterization of it as a kind of missionary organization. No. Look, the ad makes. Hold on. The ad makes. In all seriousness, no. The point is clear that we are a virtuous company. We accept, in contrast to the bigoted president who seeks to exclude. We're good. He's evil. Spend money with us. And I'm merely asking you a kind of commercial question, which is that a good play for you to say, we're the virtuous company, we're not really in this for the money, we're in it because we're just really good people? I mean, that's what you're saying.
There's obviously a reason, Tucker, there's obviously a reason you're not writing ad scripts, because that's not what the ad said, right? I think it's really important to actually look at what the ad said. What did the ad say? The ad said that there's some beautiful people in beautiful places. And ultimately what you come back to is, what is our mission? Our mission is to allow anyone to belong anywhere. We do two things with technology, right?
So
we
let's
create
get specific.
economic opportunity for people.
I get it.
And
You
we
guys
use
are great.
technology to take people online, and connect them offline from different backgrounds.
And also
that's what we do. That's what the
make
platform
billions
does.
for your own. That's great. But I'm just saying, hold on. You, in this ad, say, come to Haiti. So, hold on. Have you, I'm going to ask a question, serious question. Have you walked without protection through downtown Port-au-Prince recently? And if so, how'd it go?
I walked recently and actually spent a couple nights in Kaya, which is a township in South Africa outside of Cape Town. So, yeah, I've been to these places.
Okay,
and I've actually spent time in these places. Now, let me
Cape
ask
Town
you,
is the
Tucker,
richest place in Africa.
Have you been to those places?
Yes, I have been to Port. Yes, I have. And that's why.
You spent the night in some of these townships. Have you spent the night in some of these townships?
Slow down.
So what I'm trying to get at here is that
Chris, you can't filibuster. You have to just, let's be polite and answer simple questions. Your ad, I'm glad you went to Cape Town, which is the richest place on the continent of Africa. I'm asking about Port-au-Prince, Haiti, about which I know a fair amount. I suspect you don't. And I'm telling you it's a very dangerous place. Is it immoral, unvirtuous, bigoted to acknowledge that not everywhere in the world is the same, and some places are really dangerous and some places aren't? Is that okay, or is that a species of bigotry and unacceptance?
Well, I think what is wrong is to cast aspersions on an entire people and an entire country.
Well, I
think
agree
the
with that.
best way, and all the data supports this, the best way to break down differences is to have people from different backgrounds spend time with one another. Not to criticize them, not to condemn them, not to impugn them, but actually for people to offline spend some real time with one another. Will you
pledge to personally, with your family, go on vacation in Haiti, not at some rich people resort, but in downtown Port-au-Prince, the capital city, and spend a week, just in order to kind of get that cross-cultural pollination that's so very important? Why don't you do that, and why don't you come back and tell me what kind of time you had?
So, Tucker, first of all, if you want to talk about my family, I'm happy to.
No, I'm not attacking your family.
My guess is my family may have a little bit more cultural diversity than you may necessarily be aware of.
I'm not attacking your family. I'm just saying it's not about cultural diversity. I'm talking about Port-au-Prince, Haiti. It's a dangerous city.
The network of family values.
I'm not attacking your family,
So
Chris.
can I answer the question? Or are you going to attack my family?
Or not? I'm not attacking your family.
Do you want to question my family, or would you like me to answer the question? So the answer to your question is we're actually planning a trip to Africa, where we're actually going to be going to some of these townships that I've talked about.
You'll be surprised to learn that Haiti's not in Africa, so I hope I hope that occurs on your trip at some point. It's in the Caribbean.
But Tucker, your question is getting at whether I and my family are willing to travel to places in the world that people typically do not travel to.
No, that's not my question.
No,
that's not my question. My question was, are you going to Port-au-Prince, Haiti? No, my question was, are you going to Port-au-Prince, Haiti?
Not some poor place. A number of places, and I am happy to take my family, and we've taken my family to these types of places in the past. Right?
Okay.
Because I actually do believe in what our platform is trying to do, which is ultimately to take people from one background, connect them from different backgrounds. Right? Now, I get that you may not agree with that.
Okay. I do it, but I'm just wondering, did you get ordained before you got this job?
You didn't ask any of these questions last year. You didn't ask any of these questions last year when we ran the ad on Fox during the Super Bowl. Did you ask those questions last year?
No, I didn't. But come back after your time in Port-au-Prince. We're out of time, unfortunately, Chris.
Why didn't you ask these last year?
Oh, I don't know. Probably some sinister reason. Actually, I didn't see the spot, is the truth. But I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thanks. President Trump touted the state of the economy last night. The debate rages over whether he deserved credit for that, and if so, how much. We've got a tech founder, the head of Overstock.com, and a former Obama advisor, Austin Goolsbee, joining us next on that question. Well, the president spent a big chunk of his speech last night touting the current state of the U.S. economy. African-American and Hispanic unemployment are at record lows, he said. The stock market has hit all-time highs. All of us are aware of that. In the wake of the new tax bill, Apple and other companies have announced plans to repatriate billions in overseas earnings, bring them back here. But are the signs as good as the president says? And if they are, does he deserve credit for them? Patrick Byrne is in business, to put it mildly. He's founder and president of Overstock.com. Austin Goolsbee is a professor at University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. He was one of President Obama's economic advisors, and they both join us tonight. Thanks both for coming on. So, Patrick Byrne, you run a big business, a business that you started. So you're at, I think, a pretty good place to assess the effect of these economic policies on business. How's it been?
Well, it's definitely been positive. It's been positive in a number of ways. The tax, first of all, as a good Keynesian like Austin knows, part of the economy is the animal spirits. And certainly I would say this president has been very good for the animal spirits of the economy. In addition, the tax relief is absolutely overdue and necessary. And something that gets overlooked as far as the economy is he's pro-rule of law. He basically went to the Federalist Society, is what we read in the paper, and he got them to suggest who's all the federal judges, the next 60 that I should appoint. And
yes,
that's a very pro-rule of law move, and that's very good for the economy.
So Austin, here you have a man who runs a multi-billion-dollar company saying these policies have helped his company. Isn't that the acid test?
Well, that's one. I believe Donald Trump deserves some credit for the economy. I believe that the objection was the trying to take 100% of the credit for the economy, and that's where we disagree. So if you take the black unemployment rate in the United States, it is at record lows. It fell 8 percentage points under President Obama. It has fallen another 1 percentage point under Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump deserves some credit, and in the tax plan, there are certainly things that gave large amounts of tax-cutting money to corporations, and they're quite happy about that. And I hope that that will lead to higher growth in the economy. I want that to be true. But I think it's a little, I don't know what the correct word is, but maybe inconsiderate for the president in the State of the Union to try to pretend like he did it all. And I think the fact that 60% of the American people credit President Obama for the strong economy and about 35%
There's no doubt people
Trump
are still deeply grateful to President Obama for all he did. Patrick Byrne, the immigration question is one that's often discussed in economic terms, and the idea is that if you don't have millions upon millions of people with less than a high school education coming into your country at all times, then your economy is going to collapse. Is that your perspective on it?
No, absolutely not. I think that Milton Friedman put it correctly, that we have to at some point choose between having open borders or having a social safety net. He, as a pure libertarian, would have taken open borders. I think that the government has a responsibility. It's consent of the governed, and I think the governed want the government to look out for them and not for the whole world. So at some point, we have to recognize that not only does it stress the social safety net, but it provides a lot of competition for our less skilled workers, which is perhaps, and so by slowing the, what I really take some offense at, though, is the idea, I got to follow the law. You and I have to follow it. So I think, let's start with the premise that let's all figure out that we all agree we got to follow the law, and then we can agree what it is. But there seem to be people suggesting in the conversation that we don't, we can be fuzzy about the law. Well, if they can be fuzzy, can I be fuzzy about
Well, that's a great question. I want to put that to Austin Goolsbee, who I think is a law-abiding character, but we're hearing your party say, not just say, but shout, that in cases where there's some political benefit to having the person break the law, or that person is a good person, there are all kinds of extenuating circumstances in which people don't have to obey the law and they can't be punished for not obeying the law. Does that apply to you and me, or just illegal aliens?
Well, I think, as you know, you're taking to an extreme and not portraying accurately what their argument is.
Nancy Pelosi congratulated people for coming here illegally.
Well, in the case of the DREAM Act kids, they were brought here as small children. And so in the same way that if there's a kid in a car seat in the back seat and the parent is speeding, technically the child is breaking the law because they are speeding. But they aren't the ones who are at fault, and that's the root of the disagreement.
But no, it's not, though. It's not. Actually, if I could just extend the analogy, though, we're taking off the table the idea of punishing their parents, who are consenting adults who saddled us with this problem of their children. It is a problem. And they're not being punished either. They're getting amnesty, too.
But the question about DACA was not about the parents. It's about the kids. And what the president outlined in his original immigration policy was one that a lot of Americans agreed with, which was that he was going to start by deporting the quote-unquote bad hombres and violent criminals. And what we have seen over the first year in office is that's not what he did at all. They're going and finding doctors and people that are professionals and people that have been here for 40 years, and just on a bang-for-the-buck basis, it strikes me as an odd way to go about it.
So Patrick, really quick, if you could disobey a law, what would it be, and what would your excuse be that would satisfy the left under these new standards?
No, there would be none. There would be none. On the other hand, I know I have met Austin. Don't know if he remembers. I have actually great deal of respect for Austin.
Yeah.
You know, this is America. We're not going to go round up 11 million people. I'm not in that camp. We're not going to go do that. There has to be some path of forgiveness and citizenship and stuff. And I actually think that Trump took a very constructive step forward last night. So anyway, just wanted to say that. I thought his speech was great. I thought his speech was great. And I didn't support Trump. I didn't vote for him, didn't support him. I thought he did an amazing job.
He's been winning over at least one business executive. Thank you both for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Hillary Clinton tried to solve her Me Too crisis, and it has flowered into a crisis. Last night, while nobody was looking during the State of the Union, and now even longtime allies are turning on her. Kind of a big development. That's next.